What's up, guys? I think we're live. So, welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. I haven't seen you guys in a long time. I've been pretty busy with work. I graduated from an MBA and just kind of got caught up with a new job. But I'm back in full force. I'm going to be making a lot of really great videos, and I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams. I should be doing a live stream every other week going forward. So, it's really cool to see guys already in the comments. I got Shares in there, and then Brady Johnson. Then we got Wayne and Joe, Zachary. What's up, guys? Great to see you. And it's great to be back talking about fishing and, talking about what I'm passionate about, what I love. So first thing I'm going to do today, guys, on my stream is I'm going to just kind of get back in the groove. I got to get used to using all the software again, doing all that. So I want to walk you through one of my home lakes, Lake Ouachita, and just explain something about fall fishing. I just want to talk about what the fish do in the fall, how they act, the places they like to use, just as an overview before we start getting into some of the subscribers' lakes. And then later on, after I go through that breakthrough, I'm going to be talking about Lake Conroe in Texas, Weiss Lake in Alabama, Bugs Island Lake in Virginia, and also be doing some tackle talk and some Q&A at the end. And all throughout, I'll be answering questions on the stream. So pretty excited to hear what you guys have to say. And again, leave any questions in the chat if you want to ask me about what I'm talking about, or just ask me questions in general about bass fishing. So let's get into the fall overview to start us off. Okay, so here you go. By the way, just let me know if you can hear me and everything. I want to make sure that I'm picking up the audio good, if it's too loud or whatever. Again, haven't done this in like 3 months, so I want to make sure everything's good. But here is Lake Ouachita. This is a lake in central Arkansas, and this is a place that the FLW Tour fishes a Forest Wood Cup Championship about every other year, it seems like. And it's a great lake. It was where the cup was last year. And the reason I like it so much is because it's a deep, clear lake on the eastern side, and there's grass and sand timber, a lot of great cover. And then as you move to the western side, you have a river system, a dirty water setup, basically kind of sets up almost like a river lake or a really dirty water lake. So you have a really diverse fishery, and that's why a lot of guys from Arkansas are so good at bass fishing. They learn to catch them in the dirty water here on moving baits and flipping stuff like that, but they also can catch them out in the clear water as well. So as a general overview for fall, what I like to do is I like to start out by figuring out where the fish are in their transition from the summer pattern to the fall pattern. And what happens is that during the fall, the lakes will start to turn over, which means that all the water that's on the bottom of the lake that's cool rises up and it mixes with the warmer water, and it all becomes one temperature. And this is called turning over, when the lake turns over. And what happens is normally when there's a thermocline, the fish will only go so deep in the lake. But when the lake turns over, they can go from 0 feet of water to 120 feet of water, and they'll just get everywhere. And the big determinant of where those fish are going to be is where the bait fish are. So they're going to follow the bait. So like here on Lake Ouachita, if we look over here, right out here in the middle of the lake right here, this is actually where one of the FLW Tour pros was catching some fish flipping hydrilla. He was catching some good 4 or 5 pounders out here right in the middle of the lake during the Forest Wood Cup. And these fish will sit out here in the summertime close to the deep water out in the center of the lake. But then as the fall moves on, you get in September, October, November, the bait fish that were sitting out here on the main lake are going to start migrating back into these creeks, and they're going to push all the way back into the back of the creeks. And they do that to find food and just to push back to where some of the running water is. A lot of times you get rain in the fall, which will bring algae and other food the bait fish like to feed on in the backs of the creeks. And these fish will follow them from the main lake all the way back into the backs of these creeks. Thing is, though, is that some fish are going to stick behind and they're going to stay out here on the main lake. Some fish are going to stop at the mouth of this creek. Other fish are going to go halfway back in the creek, and then there's another group of fish that are going to go all the way to the back. And so in the fall, it's kind of difficult to find fish sometimes because they're scattered all over the lake. And you guys may have found that yourselves. You go to the lake in the fall and you're like, I don't know what's going on. Everything is happening. I can catch them out deep. I can catch them up shallow, but I don't catch very many fish. They're not grouped up. And again, the reason for that is these fish are following the shad, and sometimes they just stop following them and just kind of hang out in one part of the creek as the shad keep migrating back. Sometimes the shad will kind of bunch up in certain parts of the creeks, and so that's kind of what happens in the fall. And so we really have to be versatile when you're fall fishing. You have to be able to go and fish offshore, deep. If you're on a clear lake, you have to be able to move back in the creeks and fish up shallow with topwaters or flip on shallow laydowns, all kinds of stuff like that. And it's pretty interesting when you get to a lake when fish are doing a lot of different things, because if you're fishing a tournament, a guy might say, oh, I'm crushing them out deep in 20 feet of water, catching 18 pounds. Another guy's like, well, I ran way up the river over here, and there was some water running in and some current, and I caught 20 pounds of fish. And it happens all the time, just crazy patterns. So what I like to say in the fall is fish your strengths. If you're a deep water fisherman, try to fish out deep, because there's a lot of good fish still out there. But if you're a shallow water fisherman, get into this dirtier water. And if you look on Google Earth here, dirty water is where it gets a lot more brown. If you look over here, the water's dark and in a blue color, and then it's really dirty over here. So run back up in these creeks if you like to fish up shallow, or stay out here in the clear water if you like to fish out deep. So that's pretty much how I would break down fall fishing. You can pretty much do anything you want and catch fish. So let me get to some of these comments. So there's a bunch rolling through, guys. This is awesome. 73 people on already. That is awesome. That is so cool. Thank you guys for all the support and just jumping right back on. So I'm just going to read through comments. I need to make sure I keep that up. But what's up? We got Rick and Steve, Dean, North Carolina Bassin. What's up, guys? Let's see here. Just Fishing's on there. Let's see here. Dustin Hickson, he says, wow, Weiss Lake, I'll go test your spots this week. Please do, Dustin. Let me know what you think of the spots, and tell me if they're good. I want to make sure that I'm not just giving you guys a bunch of random spots. I want to be giving you guys good spots. And one thing I actually heard the other day, which is really cool, is that one of the guys on my stream who watched my stream on Smith Mountain Lake said he went out on Smith Mountain Lake like the week after I did the stream and caught 14 pounds of fish in a tournament on the exact spots I showed, which is just crazy. So, what's up, Clifford? Clifford Zuber, always on the stream with a $20 super chat. Thank you, Cliff. Really appreciate that. You've been here since the very first streams, I think, so appreciate the support as always. Let's see here. Steve saying, hi, you do great content. Keep up the great work. Thank you, man. Let's see here. Mike saying, Johnny, can't wait to see Conroe in a bit. That should be really fun. And so I see some people asking, he was saying someone was asking, where was Clint Davis fishing? So he was actually fishing in this area of the lake right here. This is an area of the lake that we call, what do we call it? I'm blanking right now, guys. All my Washita friends are going to be giving me crap, but he was fishing over here in this part of the lake. Someone help me out in the comments. I'm sure someone knows what this part of the lake is called, but this is the area he was in, and there's some random stretches of grass here, and there's also a lot of brush piles, and he was just sitting off some of these islands around these points, just fishing those brush piles in deeper water. He was throwing a big, like 12-inch worm, 14-inch worm, something huge. And he was just fishing off of all of these points. And it's called Buckville. That's what it's called. No one got me in the comments on that one, but it's Buckville is where we call it here in Washita. But he was fishing in here, and I think he was probably rotating around some other spots too. But all these little points, there's little drops and ditches and all kinds of stuff out here. And I'd get into it more, but I want to get to the questions to get to the first lake. But just if you fish Washita, check out Buckville, especially in the spring. There's a lot of good fish that sit up here in the grass ditches. Someone's asking, do you throw an A-rig this early in the year? Yes. Clayton Johnson, yes, I always do. Throw an Alabama rig. I have one tied on right when the water temperatures drop below like 60 degrees. They will chew that A-rig. Let's see here. So people are saying they're agreeing that they're having difficulties. One guy says, hello from Korea. That is awesome. What's up, man? That is so cool. Let's see here. Got a bunch of stuff. Big Bass says, glad to see you on Grand Lake. Hope to show more on that lake. I'm actually going out there this weekend. They caught 27 pounds. One of the teams, they had a team tournament. It took 44 pounds to win on Grand Lake, and it took 27 pounds to go win a tournament it was the second day of the tournament, 27-pound limit. So I can't wait to get back out there. I think the weather just cooled down enough for them to get out there. So either way, thanks guys for getting on the stream. I think I've given enough time for everyone to get on. So I want to jump straight into my first lake, and I'm caught up on the comments. So first up is Lake Conroe in Texas. Okay, so here we go. Lake Conroe in Texas. This is an awesome lake. This is where they fished the Bassmaster Classic in 2017, I think. That's when Jordan Lee won the Classic. And they also used to fish the Texas Big Bass Classic out here in the fall. Keith Combs dominated that tournament, and I think he won twice or maybe even 3 times. And there's a classic shot of Ike Anelli taking his rod and smashing it over the side of the gunnel and throwing his rod in the lake. Some people weren't too happy about that. I thought it was pretty intense myself, but it's pretty cool. And I got a question from Michael. I think it might be Mike Gear. I'm not really sure, but he's saying that he fishes on Conroe a lot, but he's struggling this time of year because he'll go up to the bank and he'll just catch smaller fish, 2 to 3 pounders. But Conroe, if you watch the Classic, has some giant fish out there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pounders, like huge fish. And he's like, I think a lot of the guys are fishing secret brush piles out in this lake. They're just going offshore, finding random spots, and happen to have these like secret spots they find, and that's how they're catching them. And one thing I can't say about Conroe is it's definitely an offshore fishery, pretty much year-round. And you can catch them year-round, as you can see with Jordan Lee. He was catching them right during the spawn offshore still. And so I wanted to do for Michael is I wanted to break down Conroe and the offshore structure on this lake, because this lake is just full of offshore structure. It is awesome. And I think this would be a good way to start off the stream, get back to some offshore fishing. That's what I love to do. And I know there's a lot of guys out here who want to learn about offshore fishing. So for this, I'm using Navionics. And if you guys don't know how to read Navionics or contour line maps, just go to my channel. I just posted a video. It's like my second video, my second newest upload, and it's a complete guide to topographical maps, and it explains how to read these maps. It goes back and forth between Google Earth and Navionics to show you what these spots look like in real life. It explains how to read them, everything. So go check out that video if you don't know exactly what you're looking at here, or if I'm using terms you're unfamiliar with. So first up, let's just get to some offshore structure. And in the fall, big thing you want to do is you want to follow creek channels. Creek channels are the #1 determinant of fish this time of year. It doesn't matter if it's a creek channel that's like in the very back of a creek and it's like the last little bit of a creek channel and it's like only 2-3 feet deep, or if it's a creek channel that's 45-50 feet deep like it is out here. And on Navionics, you can find the creek channels by looking for these dotted lines. You can see there's some dotted lines here going right here and right here, and that's a creek channel. And you can also see creek channels by these dotted blue lines. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm always just going to look for these creek channels, and I'm going to try to find shallower water areas that run right up next to a creek channel. That's almost a guaranteed spot to go catch fish in the fall, in the summer, pretty much any time of year, but definitely in the fall. And I'm actually putting out a video from Beaver Lake from last weekend when I was out there, and I caught like 25 fish in 2 hours on suspended over deep timber, fishing a swim bait, and all the spots were these shallower areas that hugged right up against a creek channel. And it's a great video with great sonar images for my Humminbird. It's going to be awesome. So I'm editing that one right now. It's going to be great. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow these creek channels. And so first spot I see that's hugging up right against a creek channel is actually this little spot right here. If you look, there's a creek channel that swings in, and there is a high spot, and you can tell it's a high spot because you see the water comes up and comes up. It's almost like a little hump, but it's not as defined as a hump, so I call it a high spot. High spots are fantastic places to catch fish in the fall because they normally have hard bottom, and the shad will push up on those high spots, and the bass are gonna go up there and ambush them. And so this is a great little spot right next to a creek bed, little high spot. People either going to plant brush out there, there might be already some brush, or there's just going to be some rock, almost guaranteed. So that looks like a great spot. Another area that looks really good is if you look at this creek channel, it hugs up really close right here, and there's actually a subtle little point in front of this creek. As you can see, there's a little point that sticks out, and this spot right here could be another place where there's a high spot, or there could be a really nice stack of brush piles on the spot. And these are the subtle spots you have to find on Conroe. Because, I mean, if we go around this lake, you'll see in a second, I'm just going to shotgun all of these really good ledge fishing spots. And they're so easy to find, and everyone knows how to read navionics and knows how to use their electronics nowadays. So the best spots to find are these super subtle little points. It's close to deep water, but it's really subtle. That's the stuff that separates you from the rest of the anglers, especially on these lakes that get heavily pressured. Let me get some comments real quick. I know there's people lighting me up over here, so I'll make sure we're good. Let's see here. Buckville, Garrett got me. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Clifford Zuber is saying, I'm going to Squaw Creek, which is a hot water lake in 2 weeks. Any advice on what I should throw? Clifford, I would throw a striking red eye shad, 1/2 ounce, as shallow as you can throw it, like 6 inches of water, and just burn that thing back to the boat. That's my go-to on hot water discharge lakes this time of year. Let's see here. Someone says, what's up from Ontario? It says it's almost ice fishing season, which is crazy. Clint Hart says going to fish the BFL Ozark next year. Got some advice. I'll be doing a lot of videos from all over the Ozarks, so just keep checking out my videos for more on there. Getting a lot of requests for lake breakdowns. Can you break down my lake? Do you look at this lake or that lake? One thing I will say is I just started up a new page on Patreon, which is a subscription channel or a subscription website where you can actually go donate to the channel and support the content I'm creating and also receive some benefits. So I have different tiers. I have a $5 tier where if you subscribe to that tier, then you'll have a chance to have your lake looked at on my live streams. I'll also be throwing you into a $20 bait giveaway every month. And you'll also be able to vote on polls so you can influence what content I'm making and actually vote on the topics and suggest topics for videos that you want me to make. So $5 tier is a lot of benefits for just a small price, and you also support the channel and support my content. I have the link down here in the bottom right of the stream here. Then I have a $20 tier and a $50 tier where I'll do personal lake breakdowns for you in different formats. So that's pretty cool. Just check that out if you guys have a chance. So back to the lake breakdown. Let's go to some other spots. So another spot I really like out here, Conroe is a pretty clear lake. It's not super dirty at least. And sometimes these fish will get really deep, especially if the lake's drawn down. In the fall on Conroe, I think every 4 or 5 years they'll draw the lake down like 10 feet or 8 to 9 feet. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to see like contour lines. They say 20 feet, 23 feet, stuff like that. Cut that now from 20 feet down to 10 feet. And if you look at this little ledge right here, you can see a creek channel swings up right against this bend, and it's 24 feet of water, which might be a little bit deep in the fall. These fish might not be that deep this time of year, but if the lake's drawn down 10 feet, this ledge is now, the top it's in 12 to 14 feet, which is perfect. And normally in the fall, I like to stay a little bit shallower, try to stay in the 12 to 17 foot range on lakes like Conroe, unless it's like super deep lake that is like 100, 200 feet. If it's like a 200 feet is like the maximum depth on your lake, I'll try to look between 25 and 35 feet. And then if the max depth on your lake is like 50, 60 feet, I try to stay in the 12 to 17, 18 foot range. So this spot looks really great. Creek channel runs right up against this little flat spot, and there's a little point that sticks out. This is just money right here. Little point right off the creek channel. This could be a really good summertime hole for you. Some other spots that look really good. If you look right here, nice little creek channel that runs in here and cuts right up hard against this little point. And there's a nice little ledge right here, kind of a point, a hidden point that sticks out from the bank. And these fish might be positioned up on right on the tip of this little point that sticks out, but they also might be setting up right here. This spot right here is another one of those subtle structure spots. If you look at this point, you can't really tell if there's anything that sticks out from the bank. It's pretty flat, but then all of a sudden you see this little kick out from the bank. And those hidden spots, those hidden points off the bank, those are my go-to fall spots. Between high spots and these little hidden points, those have produced so many 5 and 6 and 7 pound bass in the fall for me. And so what I'll do is I'll just put my boat out here in 18, 19, 20 feet and cast and fan cast all over this point, because there's probably a little high spot or a rocky spot right here. Someone's probably also planted brush piles, all kinds of stuff there. So let's see here. Keep moving down. I'm just kind of going on the fly here. Another great looking spot right here. Creek channel swings in, and boom, another creek channel comes back and feeds this creek. And then there's a nice little point, and this is 11 feet up on top, and there's creek channels falling off on both sides. This is almost a guaranteed spot at some point during the fall. I won't say that they're always going to be here, but sometimes, like those fish, if it's sunny and no wind, they might pull off into the channel. But if it's windy and it's cloudy, and you have those really good fishing conditions where you have current moving because the wind's blowing, or you have the cloud cover, fish will pull right up on top of these high spots and they'll just start chewing. And if you find them up on top of this high spot and they're biting really well, and you're catching them, every cast when the conditions are great, wind, clouds, but then it's sunny your tournament day, or it's like slick, calm, sun, no wind, and you're fishing a tournament out there, and you found a bunch of fish up on top of the drop, try to slide off the drop, and instead of fishing up at 11 feet of water, try to move out to that 20 foot, and look for any type of cover out there. If you have some lay down logs, some stumps, anything like that, when the sun gets up and the wind dies, those fish will hug tight to cover, and they're going to get right off the drop, close to that channel, but they're still going to want to be kind of up in that 15 to 20 feet range. They're not going to be up in the 11 foot range, but they won't be all the way back in the channel either. Rick McDaniel, thanks, man, for the $20 super chat. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the support from everyone on the super chats. Really helps me continue to make the content, and supports me in the future. No matter where I'm going, who knows what I'm going to do with the channel going in the future. So it'd be great. It's just great to get support from you guys now. And again, always appreciate everyone commenting on the videos, watching the videos, and especially sharing the content. That's one thing that really helps grow the channel. So share the videos out with as many of your fishing friends as you can. If you like the content, if you find it helpful, just share it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can. I really appreciate that. So another spot that I like, that I'm just scrolling through. Again, I'm saying these spots are pretty obvious when you look at the map, at least if you know how to read a contour line map and you know what a ledge is. And again, if you guys want to learn about that, I have a complete guide to ledge fishing and a complete guide to contour line maps on my channel. So check those videos out. They will help you find these spots and pick them out just as easily as I can. And here's a great little spot right here. If you look at this, there's a nice little creek that's running through here, road bed, and then boom. Or a creek bed, not road bed, but they're creek channel, and then there's a nice little high spot again. I'm telling you, high spots are money in the fall, and you have a little 18-foot high spot surrounded by that creek, and this is going to be a great spot, especially if that water drops a little bit. So another little ledge spot right here. Creek channel swings in. You can see the contour lines are a little bit steeper apart, and then they get a little bit closer together right off this point. That is a great looking spot. It's subtle. It's very subtle. That's why it's good. There's so many spots out here where like, oh, okay, let's just find a ledge. And if you zoom out, you're like, whoa, look at this. This is such a great ledge. And you can see there's people marking up this spot like crazy. You can see the little marks. Oh, look at this nice little drop. It looks, super obvious. Here's a super obvious like ledge. It's just a hard edge, shallow water to deep water. I mean, this stuff is super obvious, and you can catch fish on this. Like, I'm not saying this is a bad spot. This is a great looking spot, but this is just such an obvious ledge that people are going to find that, and they're going to, be able to figure out how to catch them there really easily. It's the subtle, out of the way spots. Like if we come in here, look at this spot right here. Creek channel swings in a couple times, and there's a little bit of a high spot. It comes to 16 feet, like a mini hump, and it's surrounded by a lot of the similar depth water, but that little high spot is going to have hard bottom, and that's a killer spot right in the mouth of one of these pockets. And those are some of the hidden spots these guys are talking about. So let's see, Cole saying, Jeff, proximity to deep water and overall depths as well. I would also be curious what Johnny has to chime in on that. Let me find Jeff's comment. Jeff, what makes spots better for summer versus fall? Great comment there. Basically, what I like to look for in the fall is I want to find places where two things, where the creek channel runs right up against the spot. So in the summertime, it's very similar, where you have, want to find places where the creek channel runs up against the spot, but it's even better in the fall if you can have a really sharp drop. So you have like a super sharp drop here from 20 feet down to 50 feet. Those spots seem to be better in the fall because the bait fish just seem to congregate there, and they can, in those cold fronts, they can move from the shallower water to the deep water really quick. And then the other spots that are really good are those high spots, which aren't as good in the summertime, but that's like a spot here, like this high spot. And the reason those high spots are good in the fall as opposed to summer is in the summertime, those fish want to be having access to deeper water, but they can kind of roam around. It's not terrible for them to be that far away from a creek channel, but these high spots are great because they normally have warm rocks on top of them. It's harder bottom, and so on those cold front nights, those fish can hunker down those rocks and they'll store more heat, and they'll just sit right on top of those rocks all fall long. And so that's kind of my 2 tips. Look for the places where the creek channel runs right up against the spot, and just look for those little high spots that I mentioned in in that video that I made on contour lines. So check that out again. So how am I doing on time? Oh man, I'm running so low on time. I always get talking, guys, and I always feel like I run way over. But let's see here. Got a bunch of guys. So Realistic Fishing, stop by to check out some fishing moment. What's up, man? See your channel is blowing up. That is awesome. Congrats on that. I've been keeping tabs on what you're doing. You make some great content, some funny content. So check out Realistic Fishing. He's a good guy. Let's check out a few more spots over here. So, another little high spot here, guys. No creek channel running. There's kind of like a little channel, but again, high spot leading into a pocket. And it doesn't really matter to me, guys, if I'm finding offshore spots in the back of the creeks or the mouth of the pocket. Like I said, in the fall, the fish can spread out pretty much everywhere. And so normally in the fall, like let's say it's the beginning of October, a lot of times they like to set up like late September, beginning of October, they'll set up near the mouth of the pocket. As you get later into October, they'll move about halfway back in the pocket. And then near November, they'll be closer to the very back. And so normally I'll just kind of graph all these offshore spots. Like here's a little nice little point right here. Creek channel swings in, nice little drop right off this spot. So I would check this out. I graph it. And mainly what I do in the fall is if I don't see fish there and I don't see bait there, I don't fish it. I never fish a spot unless I see bait or fish on the graph. And so I will just kind of work my way back in here. Okay, where's some other spots? Boom, right here. Creek channel swings in against this long little ridge. I would check this out. Here's a nice little place. It runs up against the creek channel. Another little ledge right here, and the creek kind of cuts in. Another little shallow point right next to the creek. I'm just rapid fire at this point, guys. Little ledge right here. I would probably graph that whole thing. I'd graph this little piece right here. That creek channel kind of bends in and out right up against this little point. Very subtle, but looks pretty good. And maybe even work all the way back in here and look at some of this stuff. Like if you look here, creek channel runs right up against this, and there's like a little bump out from the bank. Very subtle, but with that creek channel right there, this 8 to 12 foot range could be really good. So subtle stuff, but I would start out in the main creek and work my way all the way back in and just graph until you find fish and see them on the graph. And if you have trouble figuring out how to read them on the graph and see fish on the graph, check out my video. It's on the complete guide to bass fishing electronics. I explain exactly how to find fish in that video. I'm plugging a lot of videos today, guys. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the content because I think I'm just plugging my favorite videos and the ones I think are must watch. And they're all in a playlist on my channel called Bass Fishing Essentials. So make sure you check that out. And then JT, good to see you again, man. How you doing? Great work on the content. Appreciate it, man. So one last thing I'll say on Conroe. So again, lots of offshore structure spots. I mean, there's so much to fish here. Really, what you want to do, here's a good little looking spot, like a little 8-foot high spot right next to a deeper little hole. That looks really good. So much to fish, guys. Big thing, cover water in the fall, graph until you see the fish and you see the bait, and then fish as many spots as possible. When I'm fishing offshore anytime, I never make more than 10 casts on the spot, ever. and if I get a bite, I will make more casts. But if I make 10 casts on an offshore spot and don't get bit, I'm gone. And that's exactly how I see guys like Kevin Van Dam and Brian Thrift and Andy Morgan, guys like that. That's how they fish a lot of these offshore spots. And unless you know there's fish there, like you caught them there in practice or whatever, I would never make more than 10 casts on the spot, because it either means the fish aren't actively feeding or there's not any fish in the area. So always just pull up to a spot. If you graph them and you see them on the spot, mark them with a waypoint. Maybe make, I don't know, 5 casts with either a deep diving crankbait or a swim bait, some sort of moving bait. Make 5 casts with a jig or a Carolina rig or a drop shot, whatever you want to throw. And if you don't get bit in those 10 casts, move on. Because I would say 98% of the time, I get bit in the first 10 casts, and I rarely ever catch fish, and I've never caught a fish, I don't think, over 5 pounds after making like 20 or 30 casts on a spot that I haven't caught a fish before. So just in general, that's kind of what I'm looking for. So Anthony Hill said, Johnny, I won my division. Thanks for the tips on ledges. I won Glenfat division, the Glen Flint division here in Indiana. Anthony, awesome job, man. Congratulations. That's so cool. I'm glad that the tips are helping. I don't know if they actually did help, but I'm going to take credit for it anyways. Why not? So let's see here. Clint says, gifts to the Ozarks. Holler at me. Let's see here. He's I'm part of your Patreon page. Awesome, Clint. I'll hit you up. One thing I was actually asking guys, I know I need to jump to the next lake. 103 people on, by the way. That's awesome. Especially after being gone for so long. But one thing I've been thinking about doing is a guided fishing trips. And I don't know if that's something you guys would like to do. I've been kind of figuring out the idea of like how much should I charge for it, how would it work. I'm thinking about doing like lakes within an hour and a half of Northwest Arkansas where I'm from, or Central Arkansas. Those are the 2 places I fish and I can easily access. And I don't know if there'd be a lot of demand if you guys would want to go out, but it would be something you have to pay for just for the time and for gas and all that. But if you guys are interested, just let me know in the comments, because that's something that I'll definitely would love to do. And it would be something where I could take you out in the lake, show you how I find fish, show you my methodology on how to fish, and hopefully explain, how to go about searching for fish on a new lake or looking for fish. It's not going to be like a guided trip as far as me going out and having you catch like 30, 40 fish in a day. It's going to really be about how to use your electronics, how to use your depth finder to find fish and make yourself a better fisherman so you can go find fish on your own rather than relying on me to always just, show you exactly where to catch fish. So Cliff said, I'm ready for a guided trip with you. You got my vote. It's awesome. So, let's see here. I don't want to butcher your name, but it's Hunjin Cho. He said he wants to win his upcoming tourney on Sunday in Korea. That's awesome, man. Do you have giant fish in Korea? I know in Japan they have just studs out there. So let us know if you're just crushing 10-pounders out there all the time. And is like the lake super pressured? I want to hear more about Korea fishing. That sounds awesome. That sounds like a trip I need to make sometime in the future. Mike says he's interested. Let's get some Johnny guided trips, JT's saying, and Wayne definitely interested. Awesome. Good to hear that. So that was Lake Conroe. Hopefully that answered your question, Michael. I don't know if you're on or if you're watching afterwards. I will be posting all of these videos onto YouTube right after the stream, so you can check them out. So next up, I want to get to second lake I looked at, which is Weiss Lake. So let me switch over to that. Okay. Heading to Weiss Lake. So Weiss Lake is in Alabama. It's a really cool looking lake. I really like it. And the last lake, Lake Conroe, I broke down using Navionics. And Navionics is a great tool for finding fish, especially offshore structure spots. You can see the contour lines, see the creek channels, all that stuff. But what I would say is, with your Navionics, you can only see so much. You can't see the cover that's on the bottom, the laydowns, the docks, stuff like that. You also can't see the bank transitions, which are all really good stuff in the fall. And Weiss looks like a dirtier water lake. It doesn't look like it's super clear just from these images. And so because of that, I'm thinking the fish are going to be a little bit shallower. And they're not going to be as focused on that offshore structure like they're on Conroe or Lake Washita, which is clearer. And so in the fall, instead of trying to focus too much on that offshore game on dirty water lakes, I like to move up to the bank and try to focus on things like rock transitions, pockets with lots of really good looking laydowns, riprap banks, stuff like that. Those are my go-to spots on the dirtier water lakes. So what I did here is instead of breaking this lake down with Navionics, I'm going to use Google Earth because this is the most underutilized tool for bass fishermen, and it's free, completely free to download, just like the Navionics web app, which is what I was using for the last lake breakdown. But this is just such a great tool for fishermen to use, and actually I'm planning on making a video. I figured out how to take all these waypoints you see on the graph or on the computer here and download them onto your electronics. So I can take all these waypoints, download them onto my Humminbird Onyx unit or a Lowrance unit, pretty much any depth finder with an SD card slot. You can download them straight on to your graph and have all these juicy spots for you to check out. So I'm going to run into some of these spots and just show you what I'm looking for. Let's start over here. Okay, so first up, we're just kind of starting. We're starting back in the creek. Why not? This is kind of, if you can see, Weiss kind of has like a river system feel going to it. It's got like a nice little, like, I don't know what this is. It's like a little narrow area. It spits out into this other big pocket. I don't even know if you can get through here. And then it has like kind of a river system feel to it. It reminds me, this area, especially right here, reminds me of like a Lake Dardanelle in Arkansas on the upper end. And so first couple places I found, if I move to this, let me try to find rock transition. And what I did is I actually used a feature on Google Earth, which is amazing. And it's a feature where you can actually take the lake back in time and get some satellite images when the lakes are lower than normal. So if you look right here, what I did is, I'm going to get out of this. I went to this button up here on the top. It's a little clock with an arrow pointing to the left. It's right next to the little sunset button. And you click it. And what you can do is you get this little pop-up, and it gives you like a timeline. And you can actually go and click back in time and find different satellite images from different times. And I found this image from, I don't remember which one I used for this bank. I used looks like I used this from 11, so November 2014, so that's pretty good. There's November, just kind of like it is now. And if you look, the lake is like super drawn down. And you can see right here, you can see a lot of the bank exposed. And because of that, you can see a lot of really good underwater cover you wouldn't be able to see. So first spot I found that I thought looked just awesome is if you go on this bank, you can see there's a nice little rocky patch. And it goes from a bunch of scattered laydowns and some kind of muddier bank. And there's some more rock right here, but it's kind of a mixture of like rock and mud, kind of random, to these giant boulders or these giant like rock outcroppings. And this looks so good because it goes from like pretty much no rock to like the thickest rock I see on the entire lake. And in the wintertime, especially when it's colder, these fish are going to want to go towards those rocks because they hold heat. There's also crawfish that get in there. And in the fall, that's one of the most overlooked patterns. Most people focus on shad in the wintertime and in the fall, but in like late October, early November, the fish start chewing on crawdads almost all the way across the country. And you can catch fish on jigs and crankbaits, stuff like that. I've loved to throw a flatside crankbait, a storm wigglewort, a football jig, and finesse jig down these really rocky banks. And I would just come down this bank, crank it. I would probably throw a jig down the rock transition. As you can see, there's some boat docks here. You could skip those boat docks. Great little rocky bank right here, and then it kind of goes back to being like half rocky, half muddy, kind of like we were seeing down this whole way. So really good looking spot on a nice little rock transition. Couple more rocky spots that I really liked. If we go further back in the creek, one thing I will say in the fall, guys, is these fish they're crazy. They'll get up in like 6 inches of water. So like I wouldn't be surprised if there's fish like on this little like culvert up here and the boat's dragging mud and you're catching them in 6 inches of water. And they can also be out deep. And so what I would do is I would, start out deep. That's normally my plan in the fall because I love deep fishing. That's my strength. That's what I like to do. I start out deeper and then work my way shallow until I get bit by better quality fish. And so I would start out here. This is kind of like a main lake bank. Maybe if there's some rockier points and stuff out here, I might try to fish those, like a offshore spot out here. Then I would move back in these pockets and I would say, okay, well, let's find some stuff that looks good. Nothing really. There's a nice little like kind of rocky patch right here, which looks pretty good. Boom. Bingo. Look at this spot. It goes from like a nothing mud bank, maybe some Amory rocks, to just the best rocky shoreline. And you have like veins of rock with laydowns and just like really good stuff. Similar thing on the opposite side, like some big chunk rock over here. And this is all in the mouth of a pocket, which is a great staging point where fish might come from the back of this or from the main lake, move in, stage up on these rocky points, and then maybe later in the fall push back way back in this pocket. And if you look here, you have some nice rocky veins coming through here too, all the way in the back of this pocket. So really good looking pocket right here. I would just take a lipless crankbait in I always throw Rayburn red color even in the fall, and I'd throw it up in the dirt, like an inch of water, and that pattern works all the way through December. As long as the water temperature is above like 48 degrees, those fish will eat that red-eye shad, lipless crankbait, stuff like that, right up on the bank in 2 feet of water. I'm telling you, even in dirty water, even on the clearest lakes like Lake Ouachita, Lake Hamilton, Arkansas, that have 7-8 feet of visibility in some parts, they'll get up in inches of water even when it's snowing. So I have a couple videos on my channel actually of me doing that. It's pretty fun. Let me get back to the comments. I'm kind of jumping all over the place, getting too much in the breakdown, but let's see what people are saying. All kinds of stuff. Let's see here. JT says, well, how would you approach a lake with mainly only grass lines for structure this time of year? Without limits the bank. Ooh, that's a tricky one. One thing I would do in the fall is most lakes with grass lines as the main structure, there's going to be an outside grass line and an inside grass line. So the inside grass line is going to be the grass. There's like an area between the bank and the grass line where there's like no grass. And those inside grass lines are so good in the fall because what will happen is those fish will push out from the main grass line back into that inside grass line in the fall to chase shad and crawfish, stuff like that. But one thing I will say is if you can get in the boat, flipping the outside of grass lines is one of the best patterns you can do in the fall. Try to get on the steepest grass line you can find, 18 to 20 feet of water on the outside edge, kind of like you're saying. And I would just punch that thing with a 1 ounce jig or a 1 ounce flipping, like a punching skirt, stuff like that. And that's how the FLW Costa Series was just won this last weekend on Lake Gunnersville. Like I was just flipping down main river grass lines. And I know that Sam Rayburn, that's a great pattern in the fall too on that lake in Texas. So good stuff there. Let's see here. I'm also doing Q&A at the end, guys, so if I'm missing your questions, I'm going to scroll back through everything and make sure I get everything for all these people. So I'll make sure to get all of the questions. Sorry, I'm still trying to get my head back around live streaming and talking for 2 hours straight. So let's see here. Cliff says in Zuber it's around $250 to $300 for 8 hours. He said, I got it. Let's go. Awesome. Thanks for the pricing there. That's good to know. Guys, if you know what else other people are charging for guiding, throw it down there in the price. I can kind of triangulate. Don't short sell me. I might have to upcharge. You guys are saying $250, so it might be $550. Who knows? I might be getting scammed by you guys. Just kidding. I know you guys are honest with me. I trust you guys. So let's see here. JT says he's always using the Google Earth pins. That's awesome. Levy says, pick a lake in eastern Oklahoma. Let me know how much. Totally be down. Levy, that'd be awesome. I fish a lot of lakes in eastern Oklahoma, so we can definitely head out there. Alan says, thanks for breaking down Weiss. Definitely a river with dirty water. Thank you, Alan, for the context. Thank you always for the support, too, on the channel. Appreciate that, as always. Google Earth Pro is my best friend since Phoenix. It's awesome. And then Anthony says, can you pull up Lake Chickamauga, in your opinion, on early spring if you've never fished the lake before? I can check that out in the Q&A, Anthony. Check that out for you so you can keep winning those championships. And Claire says I have $50 an hour when you're ready for a guided trip. And then Gabe says, I've done guided trips for 250 to 300 for a half day. Gotcha. Okay, so trying to figure out the pricing there. We'll figure it out. I guess I'll just start high and work it down until people actually start doing it. I guess we'll try that. But back on track. Don't need to get too caught up in that right now. But let's see here. Ooh, here's a spot that I loved back in this creek. Let me go back to Weiss Lake in Alabama. One thing I love to do in the fall, I've done this on Lake Hamilton in Arkansas, and it's like a super underutilized pattern, but I go to the very, very backs of the creeks, like where it's so shallow you can barely get your boat, and I'll find these little channels, and you can see this channel right here if you look closely. It winds in right here. It's just a little bit of deep water. And when the water's a little bit higher, if it was kind of up at like full pool, let's say, let me get back over to here. If it's up at full pool, you can still see that little creek, but what I'll do is I will get, where's that go? I'll get back in here and I'll put my boat in the center of this channel and I'll work my way all the way down and I'll keep my boat in that channel, and both sides are going to be like digging dirt, but I can barely fit my boat sometimes in these channels, and I'll fish these docks. They are right up against the channel that are in like no water, dirt shallow, and for some reason fish love to get on these docks when there's just no water there, and they'll do that all the way through December on Lake Hamilton. Again, deep, clear lake, and you would never expect people, water temperatures are 50 degrees, people are bundled up, it's 30 degrees outside, and guys are going up into these shallow pockets, super skinny pockets, and fishing these channel swing docks. They're in like 6 inches of water, crushing them, catching 18 pounds off these docks. It's wild. It's like some of those patterns. It's like the pattern that I still want to make a video on, where I'm throwing an Alabama rig in 2 feet of water in lily pad stems in the spring. I'll catch fish literally on 5-inch swim baits on Alabama rig, throwing them up in the lily pad stems in 2 feet of water and just crushing them. One guy caught a 10-pounder on Lake Dardanelle doing that, and I caught like 19 pounds and jumped off a 6 one day in a tournament doing that. But anyways, let's get back to the lake. Another spot I really liked here is right off the main lake. I like to kind of have a mix when I break down lakes. One, I'm always looking for rock. That's like my go-to thing to look for in the fall. But I also want to find spots on the main lake, back in the pockets, and the very backs of the pockets, in kind of in between, or spots like right here. It's kind of off the main lake, but a little bit further back. And you can look right here. You have a nice little piece of riprap that has just enough deep water. It's probably dug out. There's probably a little bit of a ditch back in here. And that little bit deeper water gives those crawfish and the shad something to get in, and that rocky bank holds heat really good. Another little spot here, a nice little rocky vein that sticks out. Maybe you can crank that with a square bill, stuff like that. That looks super good. Another spot I like, main lake bank. A lot of times if there's current pushing because of rain, and if like a lot of times you get rain on these creeks, and the rain will come through, and sometimes it'll wash out the main lake. And so if you get out in the main river or the main lake and it's chocolate milk, run to some clearer water. In the fall, a lot of times the fish don't like to be in that super dirty water, but they like to be in the mix where it goes from dirty water to clean water, and you'll see like a mud line, or you'll see the kind of color changing where it's super dirty on one end of the lake and super clear, and you can find the place where the water mixes, so it's like 6 inches visibility chocolate milk, or 8 feet of visibility super clear. Find the 2 to 3 feet of visibility water in the fall and in the winter. That can sometimes be awesome fishing. And so, reason I picked out this bank is if you look, you got like nothing, just clay bank, or I don't even know if that's clay, it's like sandy bank. And all of a sudden it transitioned from sand to like this man-made rock. It goes sand, boom, super good chunk rock right around this point. It's probably by some deeper water because it's right by the channel. And both sides of it, there's like no rock on either side. So this looks so good right there. I picked out this creek over here because if you look at this creek, it's pretty dirty water all around here, and then if you move back, you actually get some really nice, clean water back in this pocket. So even though there's water flowing into the lake, you'll get some water flowing in, and then these pockets are so clear despite that. So that's like a really good sign. Normally in the fall, a lot of these pockets will get washed out when you get a big rain, and it'll be too muddy to fish, just dirty and muddy. And one thing I say is the hardest type of water to fish is cooling muddy water. So muddy water that has like a foot of visibility or less, that's cooling down. If it's going from like 60 degrees down to 50 degrees, that is a bad combination to be fishing. So if you're after a cold front, if you notice the water temperature is dropping, don't fish in the dirty water. Fish in the clearer water on those days. And then on warming trends, when the water's warming up, try to find that little bit muddier water because it'll warm up faster. And so muddy water on warming trends, and then on cold fronts and cooling trends, find the clear water. So I called this little pocket Laydown City back in here because there are 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a dock. 1, 2, 3, 4 laydowns, and there's also like a nice little rocky patch out here. So this is just like a killer looking pocket. Nice little high spot, nice little point. Crank that. Got some nice docks here, and then you can take a staycation in Laydown City, pick off some 5-pounders while you're there. Why not? Another little good bank I liked right here is kind of a steeper bank, and it got a nice couple laydowns here. It's like the Laydown Expressway, getting to Laydown City. And then one thing you always want to check in the fall, guys, is you want to figure out this. We always want to fish bridges. Bridges are so good in the fall and in the winter. And if you've watched any tournaments on Lake Guntersville in the past, you'll know Paul Elias caught like 107 pounds on an Alabama rig on bridges in the fall. And, these are kind of choke points where shad will kind of migrate from the main lake back into these little creeks, and they'll just kind of stop on all these bridges. And you can catch them on jigs. Alabama rigs fish right down the center, like down the bridge pilings, throw the Alabama rig, or fish a crankbait around the end of the riprap, fish a jig, stuff like that. And then another little spot I like back here is like, again, the dead end of a creek, but there's a nice like random rocky spot. It looks like a bridge went over this, but it's like a deeper little like trench because a bridge went over. They probably dug it out a little bit, so a little bit deeper water by some good chunk rock. Great spot in the fall for those fish to kind of feed and school. Couple other spots, I'm just going to shotgun these spots just because I'm running a little bit low on time. One spot I like right here, actually, I'm looking, is this little point with some, looks like there's like a house foundation here, an old house foundation. But the reason I like it is because if you look at this bank, you would never tell there's a point sticking out from this bank. It's nothing, and then a little point. And that's like a little high spot, basically, with some harder rock on it. That is money. Fish a little rattle trap or a crankbait over the top of that. And then here's a nice little culvert. Looks like there's some water that flows through, so some rock there that looks really good. One spot I like here, if you move into this flat, you can see when the lake's drawn down, it's all flat and shallow. And if you look, there's kind of like it looks like a road bed, but it's not. And there's a high spot here, which looks great. You can see some stumps, some rock up on top, and that is awesome. That is the kind of stuff I'm looking for. This is all mud. There's mud everywhere. You won't see any rock on any of these little points. You see a little flock of birds, like right here, but no other rock. And then all of a sudden, there's a little high spot with a patch of rock and some stumps. That is so good, especially in the fall. I'll just kind of rip through these spots because I have to get to the next lake and I want to get to comments. Another little rock transition. Boom. Super chunky rock. No rock. Money. Another rock transition. Super flat bank. And it goes to some steeper rock. Really good. There's some laydowns here and some docks. That's a great looking bank. As always, rock transitions are always good, as I just talked about in the latest video. And last one is a little rocky point right off the main lake. You have some nice chunk rock leading into a little pocket. So great staging spot for those fish in the fall. So, and there's also this little, I don't know if this is grass. For guys who fish Weiss, maybe you want to check this, but it's weird. Something weird's happening here. You have like I think it's debris. I call it a grass patch, but it's like debris that was pushed up by the wind, but there's a hard line right here. And I don't know what's causing that. I don't know if there's a big like drop right here, but this could be a little spot to check. This dock right here could be really good, or you could even crank right here, but there's something holding up all that grass, and I don't know what it is, but unless they just caught it at the perfect time for that grass to be there, it looks like that was something holding it up. So just keep going. Gonna keep going through here. Going through some comments. Sorry, guys. I'm not saying what I'm doing, but guys, again, suggestion lakes. For everyone who's suggesting lakes, check out my new Patreon page I just opened up. It's in the. Which way am I going? It's It's that way. There we go. It's over there. Patreon. The link is down there. Patreon.com/fishthemoment. And I set that up. It's a subscription service where you can support the channel, go on and join the tiers. And basically what you can do is if you join the tier, you are supporting the channel, supporting the content I make, and helping me make this a little bit easier for myself and help me fish even more than I do now. And also for the $5 tier, it's a $5 per month subscription. You get the chance to have your lake chosen for these live streams. You get a chance to win a $20 prize pack of fishing lures every month, and you get to vote on the polls that I put on my Patreon feed, and you can pick the content that I make and choose the topics from upcoming videos and even suggest topics for those videos. And then I also have some $20 and $50 tiers. They're all sold out at the moment, and I should be opening up more of those tiers, and those are lake breakdowns. And as I figure out how long it's going to take me to do the breakdowns and how much time it's going to take and how much time I have left in my life between work, girlfriend, fishing, Patreon, life, having friends, one of those things is always going to fall out. Who knows? But need to get all that taken care of. So not the girlfriend. I know someone is going to comment that right away, but not the girlfriend. But the basically trying to get all that stuff taken care of. So once I get all that figured out, I'm going to open up more slots and do that. So see here. Thanks to guys, by the way, for catching up all these comments. I know people are I know I'm missing a lot of these comments, but I really appreciate guys going in, talking fishing in the comments, responding to questions. If people are shooting questions and I'm not getting to them, if you think you have an answer, please respond. I'll get back in there and I'll jump in on those conversations in the Q&A at the end. So yeah, please do just jump in and just get those questions going. BJ says, let's discuss the Maumelle Pool of the Arkansas River in the fall. I'd be interested to hear your breakdown on that. Maumelle Pool is awesome. Quick tip for there, fish the lower end by the dam and fish the grass. Just find all of the water willow up and down the banks on the lower end and fish the jetties that have the wooden poles, the wooden spikes. Those jetties are the best ones, so they'll push up on there. And most of the time, all the shad in that pool will be in a 1 to 2 mile section. So if you're not getting bit on one section, just keep running up the river and fishing jetties. Like fish a jetty every quarter mile, and normally you'll find that on one stretch of the river, there's jetties that are just covered in shad, and the rest of the river, there's no shad. And those are the places that are going to be really good. So check that out. JT says, fish is much greater than the girlfriend. JK. So that's funny. And Artie, what's up, man? Good to see you again. He says, evening, Mr. Moment. That's pretty funny. 115 people. That's awesome, guys. Thanks again for all the support. Jumping back on. If you guys like the streams, again, share them with friends. I'd like to get more people in here, more people talking about bass fishing. Again, my channel is all about showing you exactly where I catch my fish. I don't cover it up with BS. I don't show you fake spots. I don't try to pitch all of the lures and the colors, and I don't get all of that. I just show you exactly where I'm fishing with Navionics maps, Google Earth maps. I talk you through how I'm catching the fish there, and I show you sonar images so you can try to replicate it on your home lake. That's what I was looking for when I was a kid for years, when I was learning to fish by myself, and there's just no one who's transparent about bass fishing and just giving out that information about exactly where they're fishing. So my goal is to always tell you exactly what I'm doing, exactly where I'm fishing, even if I'm practicing for a tournament, whatever it is. Now, if I win a tournament off a spot in the future, I'm going to tell you exactly where I catch them, because that's the only way that people around the country are going to get better at bass fishing, especially new guys. So that's kind of my pitch for the channel. So next up, I said that I would talk about tackle, and I only have about 13 minutes to talk about that now. So let me switch over to that and take a drink of water, because I haven't stopped talking in almost an hour. So let me switch to that real quick. Before I do that, Artie's asking, how do you catch the biggest fish in a lake full of 12 inchers? Stock it with bigger fish. That'd be my suggestion. Now, And then the other thing I would say is I would try fish offshore. If it's a offshore lake, or if there's a chance to fish offshore, I go there. If it's a pond, wait till the lake floods. There's some ponds where I fished them, there's like no fish, and wait till the big rain comes in and try to fish the day after a rain storm or when the ponds start to flood. All the big fish in the lake will flood to the bank, and you can catch a bunch of fish. So, Clifford said, I never see you fishing braid. How do you feel about braid? I love braid. I actually if you ever see me throwing a buzzbait, which I do in like almost every video, it seems like. I love fishing a buzzbait. If you ever see me fishing a buzzbait, I'm throwing that on braid all the time. I also flip when I'm fishing a big jig on braid. There's a couple videos there, and then I also throw a frog on braid. I haven't made like any frog shows on my channel, which is insane because that's like one of my favorite techniques. But I've been trying to show more offshore fishing. That's mainly the reason why I don't do as much braid fishing. It's just because most of the time the tactics that aren't talked about as much are the offshore techniques, and that's what I love to do. And so I've been focusing on finding lakes where I can fish offshore. But going in the future, I'm hopefully going to be making more videos of like fishing lily pads, shallow water, fishing with frogs, and flipping jigs and braid line fishing. I love fishing with braid. That's like for like 1 year, I just only threw a frog like the entire year and just crushed them. That was like my favorite thing to do for a full year. See here. He said, keep it simple says, man, this channel is awesome. Thanks for your efforts. Problem man. Big Bass says, doing a great job for such a young angler. You're very informative. Thank you, Big Bass. 1979. And Anthony Hill, don't cast in the water, cast near the bank. Cast to the bank near the water. It's funny. And then Jorge says, learned a lot from your map breakdowns. Cheers. Appreciate that. So I do want to get to this tackle breakdown. So reach that. Before I do, again, sorry for just making all these plugs, guys. I'm just trying to pump up this page because it's something that I'm pumped about doing because I think I can get some really good information to you. This is my Patreon page. And here's some donations, some tiers. You can get a lot of really good benefits from this. Like I was talking about earlier, personal lake breakdowns sold out. One-on-one fishing lessons, video fishing lessons are also sold out. But I will be doing more of these, opening more of these up. The first couple I've done have been really great. Really enjoy that. Also, I have polls on videos I'm going to be making, so you can vote on which videos you want me to make. And the $5 tier, again, you can suggest, or you can have a chance to have your lake picked for a live stream. You can get a lure package, and you can also like vote on these videos. And there's only 9 people in this tier right now, so the sooner you get in, the more likely you're going to have your lake picked on the live stream. Normally, I pick 3 lakes per live stream, and so there's a 1 in 3 chance right now of my 9 patrons getting their lake picked for the next live streams. That's really good. So if you want to get on that, you better get in as quick as you can, because otherwise your chances are going down. But anyways, Tackle Warehouse. Let's get over here. Some of my favorite baits. I'm just going to go really fast through this, guys, because I don't focus too much on lures. That's never been my gig with this channel. I focus more on the locations, but some baits I love to throw in the fall. One of them is, they have swim baits as their own category. I'll go to hard baits. I don't fish too many soft baits in the fall, to be honest. One thing I always do is I fish deep dive and crankbaits. So I'll throw a Striking 6XD. I'll throw some of these what do you want to call them? DT 16s, DT 18, stuff like that. 6XD, 8XD. Deep dive and crankbaits are so good in the fall because you can fish that offshore structure and those like creeks, channel swings like we talked about on Lake Conroe, and that's like the go-to bait on Lake Conroe. And I'll fish these things in brush piles through standing timber, all kinds of stuff, and just crank offshore, and it imitates the shad. It's really good bait. Another thing I like to throw are flat side crankbaits, and so they don't actually have a section for those, but my favorite is, let's see here. My favorite is the KVD 1.5 flat. I don't know if they have it here. Well, I know they have it. I'm just not finding it in the 5 seconds I'm looking. But the KVD 1.5 flat, you guys have seen me throw that bait so many times in the fall. looking for it here. I cannot find it, but just look it up online. Another thing I love to throw is a storm wigglewort, and that's a great little bait to throw. This one right here, the original storm wigglewort. Rock crawler by Spro is also really good to crank, and I'll throw that down rocky banks. The Strike King Lucky Shad, that's a great bait. I crushed them last year on that thing. It's a flat side crankbait again. And then another bait I like to throw is this Bolso Wesley Strader crankbait. This one is so good. It's a flat side crankbait. And flat side crankbaits are so good in the fall. You have the medium divers. I kind of fish all three of them, but they don't actually have a side shot of this thing, but it's like super flat. Do I have one? I don't have one laying around, but looking. Wait, I may have one. 1 second. I'll be back in just like 2 seconds. I got one. Okay, so this is the bait. This is actually a Strike King version, but you can see it's super flat. It's a flat side crankbait. And these crankbaits, this is made of balsa wood, and this is an old Strike King one, but it's the exact same as that Wesley Strader one. And super thin, and that bait is so good in the fall. And you just crank those on literally any rocky bank, dives 5 to 7 feet deep. And I'll fish on like 10-pound fluorocarbon line. Really good stuff. Obviously, everyone knows that a square bill is really good, so just fish literally any square bill. They all work pretty well. And I love fishing a square bill crankbait. Just cranking that anywhere. Love to fish a lipless crankbait. My go-to is a Strike King red eye shad. I'll fish a red eye shad in the Rayburn red craw color, and I have a video coming out on that literally next week. Is this a silent version or something? Yeah, it's a silent. Where's the actual version? Oh, here we go. Bestseller. My favorite go-to color right now that I just am in love with is, let's see here, this one, Sam Rayburn red craw. This is like my favorite color right now. I'm loving that, and I throw that in the grass, up shallow, in dirty water, pretty much all the time. And I'll fish that up super shallow with like 15-pound monofilament line, 7-foot medium to medium heavy action crankbait rod. And I also will throw an old school rattle trap sometimes, especially if the fish are getting used to seeing that. If they're getting used to seeing that red eye shad or something like that, or even like these one knockers, sometimes old Bill Lewis rattle trap in that chrome blue back can just be a killer, and they just don't see it. It's just something they haven't seen, a little bit different profile, and they'll bite that. Jigging spoons are awesome. I love fishing jigging spoons out deep. I'll throw a big flutter spoon, like these Ben Parker spoons, 6-inch spoons, really good. Lake Fork tackle spoons are good. And then I'll also fish some of these little metal spoons. So I'll fish a little CC spoon, Cotton Cordell. These are the cheapest ones you can get. I don't know where are they? Here we go. The CC spoons. 2 for $3.99. I fish them in half ounce and 3 quarter ounce. Very good baits. Just drop them vertically underneath fish. I'll be making a video about that this winter, guaranteed. And then other than that, like I fish a lot of hard baits. I also fish some swim baits. I love to fish a Kitech swim bait. So I will fish. See here, let me find them. I feel like everyone knows the Kitech Fat Impact swim baits. Those are so popular nowadays. See here. Reaction Innovations has their own Reaction Strike. Okay. Lots of knockoffs of all these baits too. Having trouble finding them, but it's kind of hard to just rip through this. Am I missing them? What's going on? Do they not have Kitechs on here? What's going on? I'm probably scrolling right by them, guys. This is like the worst thing ever. It's me going to a tackle website. I hardly ever shop for tackle. I'm not a big fan of buying fishing tackle. Here we go. Rage Swimmer. I fish this thing too. And just this type of bait. I fish it in the 3.75 inch and the 4.75 inch almost exclusively. I fish it in the Ghost Shad when it's really clear water and that bait. And then I'll fish it in the Pro Blue Red Pearl, that kind of color. It says the white belly and the blue back. Loving that. Get a bunch of questions here, guys. Sorry for slacking. See here. Since I'm talking about tackle, you guys have gone off. I guess you guys like. Do you guys like when I talk about tackle? I can make tackle videos like Tactical Bassin. They make such like in-depth tackle videos, and it's just like one cut, and it's just them talking about tackle, and they have like ton of knowledge. And I could do that too if you want me to just like talk about all the intricacies of all the baits and stuff. If you want me to make like a 20-minute video of just nonstop, that would take me like 20 minutes to make, and I could post it. All my other videos with all the editing and stuff take like 6 or 7 hours to make. But if you guys are okay with me just making like straight up tackle videos, like Tackle Bassin, I can do that for days. I just know that they do a good job at it, so I don't, feel like I need to duplicate efforts there. I put my effort in other stuff. But if you want my opinion, if that would be something you want to see, I'm definitely game to do that. And I have a complete guide to jig fishing that's coming out, which I'll show all the jigs I fish, but it's going to be mainly focused on where I fish the jigs, how I fish them, stuff like that, not just the actual baits themselves. Again, there's a lot of videos. A lot of guys just do straight up tackle videos, and that's not really my my gig as much, just because, again, a lot of content out there already on that. Dustin says, are these live streams available for rewatch? Yes, they are. They'll be posted right after I'm done with the stream. A bunch of people dropping off. I guess people are not liking this lure talk, but from the edge to the ledge, KVD 1.5 flat. Oh yeah. That is a great bait. Anthony says, if you're getting skunked, I feel bad for you, son. Johnny can have 99 problems and catching fish ain't one. That's pretty good. Let's see here. Where do you go to fish a new lake? What else do you do besides map study? Intuition. I just get on the lake and just fish a ton of spots. Like when I get to a new lake, I try to fish like 50 spots in a day. And in general, I fish like 20 or 30 spots a day. Even if I know the lake, I'm just kind of like, I kind of fish like KVD or Brian Thrift. And if you can't tell, I'm a little bit like hyperactive when it comes to fishing and like just a little bit like, I don't know. I'm tweaked out on Red Bull or whatever you want to say, jacked up on Mountain Dew, but I'm kind of excited when I go fishing, but I love to just fish a ton of different spots, cover water. That's how Brian Thrift, KVD, Andy Morgan, Gerald Swindle, some of the best anglers in the world, best junk fishermen in the world, that's how they fish. That's what I like to do. Normally I do my fishing a little bit deeper than those guys, but I kind of take their approach of just running a ton of spots and do it offshore instead of on the bank, and it seems to work out really well. So that's kind of my advice. You should really try it sometime. Just fish like 50 spots a day. Just count them and spend like 10 minutes per spot. I guarantee you'll catch more fish than if you're just sitting in one or two spots all day. At least most of the time, not all the time, but E-Hug says, Johnny, I think you should stick to the lake breakdowns and possibly how and what you would do in those instances exactly like you've been. Awesome. I'm glad that you guys are agreeing with that. And then JT says, I'd be fine with your version of tackle videos. He says tackle is MVP. Okay. What are some good baits for fishing suspended bass? I fish a swim bait and a spoon. That's pretty much all I use for suspended bass. A swim bait on a single jig head and then a jigging spoon. Let's see here. Getting all kinds of questions. I'm going to get back to this in the Q&A. I'm going to get off the lure stuff. People are dropping like flies since I've talked about the lure stuff, which is hilarious because I don't like talking about lure stuff as much either. I like talking about the maps, so I might just cut that segment from future live streams because we've lost so many people. Since I pulled up the map, 2 more people have joined. It's like magic. Okay, so next up, we're going to start switching to the last lake, which is Kerr or Bugs Island Lake in Virginia. So let me get that pulled up. Okay. Cool. Got the Google Earth back up. So next up we have Bugs Island Lake, and Bugs Island is awesome. This is a lake that they fished several times back in the 90s for the Bassmaster Classic. Brian Kirchhoff actually won his Bassmaster Classic there in 1995. I don't know if you guys know the story of Brian Kirchhoff, but he was a Federation angler who qualified through the Federation, then won the Classic a second time through. He finished last place in the 1994 Classic at Bugs Island, Kerr, and then came back the next year, same lake, and won the entire Classic. And unfortunately unfortunately, he died in a plane crash 2 years later, and he was one of the rising stars of bass fishing. But he won out here, and really cool to hear him. Is that Bugs Island? That might not be actually be Bugs Island. Am I thinking of a different lake? I might be thinking of a different lake. Am I thinking of a different lake? What am I thinking of? What lake am I thinking of now? I don't know, guys. That's High Rock. I don't know why I'm thinking Bugs Island. That's High Rock Lake. I apologize. That's definitely High Rock Lake. Bugs Island, they have fished classics here, though, in the past, too, and fished some, I think maybe fished a classic. They fished at least some Bassmaster tour events or like old Bassmaster events on Bugs Island. Apologize for my lapse in bass fishing history. These are all tournaments that were held before I was born, and so I'll give myself a little bit of slack on that. But Bugs Island, they definitely have fished tournaments out here. Tommy Biffle, I think, won a tournament out here back in the day, flipping. But anyways, sorry about that. Let's see here. So we have Bugs Island. This is sorry, I'm gathering my thoughts after that whole mess right there. Bugs Island is a deep, clear lake here in Virginia, kind of like all the Virginia lakes. It's in a string of lakes, similar feels and looks, I feel like, similar to a Lake Hartwell, places like that. Kiwi, I don't know how to pronounce that, but a lot of lakes like that, and Lake Murray. And I don't know if this is a herring lake or not. I did not actually check into that. It looks like it could be, but it may not be. And one thing I've noticed about Bugs Island / Kerr, John Kerr Reservoir is that it's pretty featureless. There's not that much. Like, there's some rock down here by the dam. You can see there's like some rock patches, but in general, it's like very void of life. And I have this lake drawn down here a few feet, and as you can see, there's like really not that much rock on the shoreline. There might be like small patches of rock you can find, but not really any standing timber, really nothing to talk about out here from Google Earth perspective. And when I get on lakes like this, I actually get really excited, because what you can see is that there's a lot of pockets, there's a lot of creeks, and because they're so featureless and there's not that much rock or cover to be seen, any cover you find or any irregularity you find is going to probably hold fish. And one thing I found on Google Earth is that there's almost always an image of a lake when it's drawn down like 10 feet. It's like 90% of the time you can find an image of a lake drawn down. And if you look right here, you can't really see too much. The lake's not drawn down that much. But if we go back, let me try to find this image. Is it rock? Here we go. If I take this image back, we can go all the way back to black and white imagery. 2002, I was 7 years old. And you can see that there's some underwater footage or images of this lake when it was really drawn down. And so I really like these images because you can pick out everything that's under the water. And in the fall on these type of lakes, any of these irregularities down the bank, these fish are going to be migrating back in these pockets, and anything you can find that's different or unique is going to be where you want to stop. So a couple things to look for, like look at this right here. There's a nice little like rock patch. There's like a rocky point right here, and you can't see any rocks really like anywhere else down this bank. There's like maybe like a handful right here, but most of these banks are void of any rock. And then you come to this little bank right here, and it's got rock covering it all over, and that's in this creek right here for those who are interested. Here's the whole lake. There's the dam. So there's like pocket here, more rock. If you come down here, you can see there's like a little rocky patch. I have it covered up with a marker, but there's like an actual just rock right here off this point that looks great. And then there's another like giant rocky patch right here. I don't know what that is actually. It could be like a giant boulder or like a rock vein. It's something weird. Maybe it's like a little patch of gold. I don't know if someone wants to try to go down there, and I don't know if they have gold in Virginia, but it could be another little like rocky patch. Look at that. There's like a rock like boulder field. That has to be planted by someone. That's like too perfect. There's like nothing else like it. So that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for back in these pockets, all these rocky patches. There's a bunch of docks back in here actually, and normally I would say, oh yeah, just go skip those docks, fish those docks, but there's actually a lot of them in here, and I've noticed that there's some pockets where there's like one dock, and I really like that. So if you look in this pocket here, you can see there's no docks like anywhere in here, not a single dock. And as you move further and further back, you get 2 docks in the very back of a creek. That is so textbook for bass because there's nothing for these fish to get on. They have this entire creek. Here's the main lake. They have this entire creek to get in, and there's literally just 2 docks in the back of a creek. Maybe actually there's 3 docks, but there's 3 docks in the back of this creek, and that's just so textbook. And so what I would do is I would fish. I would skip all of this. I wouldn't fish any of this stuff. I would just run straight in the back of this creek. I would head right here, and I would just skip those 2 docks, and I would leave. And I would run out of this pocket, and then I would run to this next pocket, and I would say, okay, what else looks good in these pockets that's sticking out? Well, if you look here, you have this like open area. There's no rock. It's pretty featureless. Nothing going on here. And then all of a sudden, you have a little point sticking out from this pocket. And if you look at this bank, you would never expect for there to be a point sticking out from here. That's a classic fall spot that looks so good. And what I would do is I would just come in through here, and I would say, okay, let's crank this point. I'd start out here and crank all the way up on top of this point, and if the water's up, crank up on top. And the reason this point is so good is because if you look at these rest of these pockets, like imagine you would expect a point to be right here because there's a point in the land. You'd expect a point to be right here because there's a point in the land. You wouldn't expect there to be a big point right here because there's just nothing. It's a straight bank. But that's exactly what you have here. You have a pocket and then just a random point sticking out. Those are underlooked spots by anglers, like overlooked. People don't look for them. They won't see that unless they draw this lake image down or they use their navionics. And sometimes these spots don't even pop on navionics. Another spot, another little point again, flat bank. You can barely tell there'd be a kick out from the bank, but there's a nice little point that sticks out. Now I'd throw a rattle trap on that, like a lipless crankbait, a jerkbait, a crankbait, stuff like that, and just fish off the bank and fish down that point. Another little pocket I like, if you look through here, just like I was saying, there's not any docks in this whole area. 0 docks, 0 docks, 0 docks, 0 docks. Not a single dock in any of those pockets. And then we come back across the lake, and there's 2, 3 docks. Again, 3 docks in this pocket. And it's just that irregularity. It's something different where there's people, like there's people that will fish through here, and they won't even think about fishing these docks. There's not that many of them, but they don't realize there's no docks in like a quarter-mile stretch of this lake. Those are the only docks in the area, and those fish are just going to gravitate to that. It's a really good-looking area. Another spot, again, that I like to fish, I always say fish high spots in the fall because high spots always hold fish. And the reason they do, again, is because those high spots hold heat. They're harder bottom. Whenever you have a high spot that's raised up from the bottom, they'll have harder bottom on top. And that's just obvious right here if you look at this spot. It's a nice little high spot. Again, this point, you would never expect this point to be here. And if you look closely, there's just chunk rock all over the top of this point. Or this high spot. It looks awesome. And I would crank this, and fish will just congregate on these spots. And I have a spot here in Arkansas on Lake Maumelle that's a high spot like this. And every fall, I can pull up on this spot and catch 40 fish a day. Like literally 40 fish, just back to back. Multiple on each cast. I've caught like 3 or 4 doubles in one day off that spot on a crankbait. 2 fish on 1 crankbait. And it's just these high spots that stick off the bank that are really, really good. Another spot, again, it's the exact same deal we've been talking about, but you'd never expect for there to be a point right here, but all of a sudden you're going down a flat bank and there's a nice little point. So those are just like key little spots. And then if you look back here, there's actually some good looking stuff back in here. If you look, there's a little like railroad bridge that maybe got knocked down or whatever, so there might be some rubble and debris back up here in this little cut, and this little cut is going to push current through there and kind of narrow down, and the current's going to funnel through that area, and the fish might just stack up right here in that little cut and be in all that debris. And then show you a couple more spots here. I got another little high spot, same exact deal, some rock right off. And you can't really tell that would be a point, but boom. And one thing that's cool is if you get on this pattern where you're catching fish on high spots and you're like, oh, I catch a bunch of fish on this high spot, almost guaranteed you're going to be able to run from this high spot to this high spot up here. And then I have another high spot marked over here, the exact same deal. Again, a little like high spot rocky spot that sticks off the bank, you wouldn't expect it. So like you can pattern these high spots and just run and just catch them. Another spot that's cool is if you go way back in this creek. Sometimes you find this on lakes like this. They're like some of them are like man-made or like flooded. So you can find these old like road beds and like little cuts in the road. And these are all like little footbridges or maybe they're culverts or something in a road. And right here is a really nice looking cut. And those fish will just kind of group up in that hole. And you can fish a jig down there, fish a crankbait. And I would just fish those two little cuts every time I went out in this lake. And then another thing, I point out this little dam. One thing in the fall that I love to do is fish around dams. Lake Tenkiller is really good. You can fish the dam on Lake Tenkiller. Greer's Ferry Lake in Arkansas. If you fish Brewer Lake in central Arkansas, there's a little dam there. And those are always really good. And you can just fish a jig just down the dam, down the dikes, and start. And really, I just fish this end and this end. The furthest left and right side of these dikes, these dams. And that's because normally if we look at a map, I'll show you on Google Earth, the bank kind of transitions from super deep water to shallower water, and those fish like to get on those transitions. Another little spot that's great, another little point right off here. Again, you would never expect that point to be there. Again, very subtle spots, but they're pretty cool. And then the last spot I want to show before I jump over to Google or to Navionics on this lake is this bluff wall. And the reason I like this bluff wall, actually I'll show you what a bluff wall is. It's basically a place where the creek channel runs right up against the bank, and it creates a steep bank that goes from like a foot of water to 20 feet of water in like, 4 or 5 feet. It's like straight off the bank, it gets super deep. And this is the only good looking bluff wall I've found on Bugs Island Kerr, like the only one. And in the wintertime, bluff walls can be really good, especially in the like late fall. You can just fish down them with a jig, and you want to fish the bluff ends, the places where the bluff actually ends and stops. And so these bluff ends are great. Basically, you just fish down these bluffs, and I would just fish a jig, fish a jerkbait, fish an Alabama rig, stuff like that. And I would fish all the way from here, all the way down this bank to here, where the bluff ends, and it's the only bluff I found in this entire lake, which is mind-blowing, but it was the only one I could find. So that's pretty much it. And then one more thing I want to do is just switch over to Navionics, and then I will get to all your questions, guys. Sorry for slacking there. Just trying to stay on schedule. So let me switch up here. Here we go. And we're going to pull up John Kerr Reservoir. So first thing I want to do is I want to move over here, and I'll show you that dam that we found. Here we go. Here's that dam. So here's what I was talking about, guys. Here's the dam, and this is where that rock was called the dike or the dam. And if you look at this dam, you can see it's super steep right here. All the contour lines are stacked up right on top of each other. And as you get to the right side, they start to narrow up, and on the left side, they start to narrow up. And I love to fish the places where those contour lines start to spread out and the bank gets shallower because it's a transition. And those fish will sit right on that transition from the shallower, flatter bank to the steeper bank. Another thing you'll notice about this lake is that it's just like super rich with offshore structure, offshore cover. So if you look, there's points and ridges and dips, and it's just overwhelming. There's so much going on. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many contour lines. There's so much happening here. And so it's like overwhelming to figure out what to fish. But what I would do is if I was coming out here, I would just pick like 2 creeks in a day. I wouldn't try to fish every single creek. I would say, okay, I'm going to pick these 2 creeks just because these are the 2 I'm going to pick. Right in here, I'm going to pick these creeks. And I'm just going to say there's like kind of 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to focus on just those today. I'm not going to do anything else. And what I'm going to do is, if I was going to try to fish offshore in the fall, I'm going to start here where the main creek channel runs into this flat. So as you can see, here's the main river channel, and it splits here. And it splits here, and it feeds this creek. So I would follow this creek channel, and I would say, okay, where does this creek channel hug up against any type of point or ridge? And I would start out by looking right here. Here's a nice point, and it drops off straight into the channel. And so I would start out in like 50, 60, 70 feet, and I would graph all the way up on top of this point, and I would be looking for suspended fish. And I actually don't have this pulled up. I'm making a video on exactly this, guys, this week. It should be posted on my channel later this week of this pattern I'm talking about. I went on Beaver Lake last weekend and crushed them, like 25 fish in like 2 hours. And I just fished all these little points that were right next to the creek channel. And the fish were sitting out here in like 35 to 40 feet of water, suspended. And the fish, the bottom was 35 feet deep, but the fish were like in 15 feet of water, and they were suspended over trees that were in 35. So the trees came up from 35 feet to 20 or 15 feet, so they're like 20-foot tall trees. And they would sit right up on top of them. Or they'd sit up on top of rocks or brush piles, all kinds of stuff. And the trick in the fall is to find those points that are right next to these channels. So I would just zigzag and graph all across here looking for suspended bass on my graph and try to find those suspended fish. And I would keep following this. Boom, here's another little spot where that creek channel runs right up against this point. I would graph all up and down this, especially like right in here. There's a little like high spot, little flat spot, and here's a nice little point. I would just graph all of this. Another little point, I would just graph off this point right here and just graph and just look for fish. And I wouldn't make a cast till I found fish. If I didn't see a fish on my graph, I would not make a single cast. Then I would start, okay, that creek channel, I kind of exhausted that one. Now I'm going to pick this creek channel. I'm going to run it across and be like, okay, boom, great little point. It runs up right against a steep point. I would graph right here. I would graph up and down around this point. I would kind of keep going here. Then I would move across and I would graph all of this. Keep graphing, keep graphing, keep graphing. I'll have a video. I'll show you exactly what to look for on your graph. It'll be like perfect images from my sonar of what to look for. And you just keep going around this curve, hook around this corner, and I would just keep following. I would graph around here. I would graph right here. Pretty much any place where you have the shallower water, this 20 foot of water, right next to the creek channel, that's the stuff you want to be graphing. And graph from 60, 70 feet all the way up to that 20 feet of water, because sometimes they can be suspended over trees or cover down in 60 feet. Sometimes they're in 20 feet. Sometimes they're in 15 feet, suspended over like short little bushes and stuff like that. So you kind of have to keep them honest. But then I would keep following this creek channel all the way through and just graph till you find the fish. And then I would throw an underspin, an Alabama rig. I would maybe jig a jigging spoon right over the top of the fish. If I saw them on my graph deeper, I might throw a deep diving jerk bait if they're only in like 15 feet of water. That can be a good technique. And again, just work your way all the way back. Keep following that creek channel. Keep graphing all the points and all the little places where that creek channel hits. I'm just circling them all with my mouse. There's so many, guys. And it's like you never know which one. So like a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start graphing and I'll graph for 45 minutes and I'll graph every single one of these points all the way down, and then right in here they'll be on every single point in this creek. You'll go into this point and they'll be like fish, 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 fish. Like literally every single point you come on, they'll just be stacked. And so don't get discouraged if you graph for even 3 hours and don't find fish. That's how offshore fishing goes, and that's how a lot of my videos go. You don't see me out there, but sometimes I'll go graph for 8 hours, and I'll fish some spots obviously in between, but I won't catch anything because I just don't see anything good on my graph. But then the next day I'll go out to the exact same lake. I'll pick a new area of the lake, a new creek, and I graph, and they're just lit up and just everywhere, and I just crush them. So, that's how it kind of works. So, that's pretty much it for Kerr, John Kerr Reservoir. Sorry, I got confused with High Rock earlier. And I'm now going to get to all the comments that I've neglected for 30 minutes. I apologize. And here I go. Let's get back to it. Guys, right now we're getting into Q&A, basically. So be putting any questions you have in the chat. I'm just going to be rolling through chat. All the questions I missed, I'm just going to get to them and start answering all of them. And so we're done with all the lake breakdowns. If that's what you guys are here for, I'm just going to be on for the next 30 minutes just answering y'all's questions. So, okay, wow, so many comments. See here. Okay, I'm back. I'm so far back, guys. Let's see here. Gabe Williams, what's up, man? Good to see you. He says, do you put a swivel on your spoon when you're fishing? Yes. I always put a swivel on my spoon to avoid line twist on every spoon I fish. Let's see here. JT saying Tactical is MVP, and everyone's like, yes. Yeah, good stuff there. Larry Donor, thanks for all the great comments, by the way, man. I really appreciate that. He says, when you're looking at side scan, is the right side on the sonar on the left side of the sonar? The left side of the sonar, or is it opposite? So is the left side the left side and the right side the right side? Yes. So when you're looking at it, think about the sonar when you're doing like a side scan is it's behind your boat, so it's taking an image of what's behind your, like what's directly under your motor basically. And so everything you see on the screen is now taking place behind your motor, and whatever's to the left side of your boat is going to show up on the left side of the screen. Whatever's on the right side of your boat is going to show up on the right side of the screen. I just did that backwards in the camera. If you're flipping that, sorry, what I said was correct. What I showed was probably not correct. In the video, but anyways, see here, Clifford Zuber saying, I see you use the PT reels. Do you like the round reel models like the Calcuttas? I do like the Calcutta style reels. I've just never got any. I would like them for like an Alabama rig or like a big swim bait. That would be my go-to for those. But other than that, I don't fish that many big baits, so I like the lower profile reels. I just always have. Big Bass 1979 is saying, do the videos you do, they're different than anyone else's. Awesome. Anthony says, no, Tactical Passon talks too much to get to the point. It's awesome. So Artie, he's asking, do you fish a lake that is full of cover? How do you fish a lake that's full of cover or the entire lake is considered bassy? Big thing I do on those lakes is I try to find any subtle depth changes. So I look for areas where even if it's like the entire flat or entire lake is like 6 or 7 feet deep, I look for the places where it goes from 6 feet to 8 feet or 2 feet to 4 feet. And then I just try to find those changes, regardless if that's in a big grass flat, if that's in a field of timber. You want to look for like the ditches, the drains, stuff like that. It's all in that video I made about the contour line maps. It's on my channel, and I just follow those, and then I just put the trolling motor down and I just fish. I don't worry too much about graphing. I just pick up a moving bait. So if I'm fishing a field of lily pads, I'll pick up like a Zoom horny toad so I can cover water. If I'm fishing in a field of standing timber, I'll try to fish like a crankbait or maybe a swimming jig so I can swim the jig through the cover pretty quick. If I'm fishing a lake that's full of grass, I'll throw a lipless crankbait or maybe like a swimming worm, stuff like that. Just something to cover water. I fish at top water over the top of it too, but just cover water and look for those subtle depth changes. And that's all I can say. And then just fish till you get bit. And then normally when you get bit on those type of lakes and you get one fish, there's normally more fish in that area. So always mark the spots where you get bit. Even if you catch a 12-incher, always mark it, because most likely there's a group of fish there. They're just not active. And if you come back later, you can actually catch more fish there. Let's see here. JT says, Legend. JT's got all the best comments tonight. Legend has it. Johnny runs across the lake. You can see where he's been before he moves. He's so fast. Codename the Flash. Flash the moment. That's awesome, guys. Michael Edens is saying, we better to make 2 1-hour videos instead of 1 2-hour video. Probably for the channel, yes, it'd be good to make that. Just from time perspective, I like to do a 2 hour just so I can knock it all out. It's harder to set up everything and do everything. I might try that though. Maybe do a 1 hour stream every week. It's just hard to get through all the content that way. But maybe I can. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Would you rather have a stream every single week and I do an hour and maybe I just break down 2 lakes? Or maybe I guess I could do 3 lakes. I could just cut out all the extra, like the Q&A and all that, and I could just do 3 lakes, 20 minutes a lake, and I could do that every single week. Would you prefer that, or do you prefer the 2 hours every 2 weeks? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a comment in the video too afterwards, but also leave in the chat here. If you're watching after the video, leave that comments down below. Anthony says, thanks, Johnny. Time for work. I'll be finishing the video and watching all over tonight. Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks again for all the comments and all the support. Appreciate that. See here. Bass Sicario. What's up, Johnny Greens from North Carolina? Really appreciate your videos. No problem, man. Thanks for checking it out. And then let's see here. Johnny, thanks for the great in-depth tutorial as always. Appreciate it, Steve. Clayton says, Johnny, you should do a rod and reel arsenal video. I can do that, Clayton. All my rods and reels are super old, so I can do that. But you pretty much see all the rods and reels I fish throughout my videos. I could always make a video like that, but like most of my reels are like 12 years old, and you wouldn't be able to find them or buy them anyways. They're like all from 2010, 2007, something like that. All super old, but they work, so it's fine. I used to be sponsored by Quantum. That's why I have all the equipment, just so you guys know. I used to be sponsored by Quantum when I was fishing. I used to be sponsored by 12 different companies when I was doing junior bass fishing, even up all the way through college fishing. And then I just had to take a break for school and to get my career going. And now I have no sponsors, so I'm back to just me, just fishing, and I'm still having a lot of fun doing it. So maybe I'll pick up some sponsors sooner or in the future, but I'm not sure if I want to deal with too many sponsors because I don't want to make my videos into like product plugs like a lot of channels are. It's just like, hey, today I was fishing a X and X fishing rod and fishing reel, and this is the best fishing line ever. Like a lot of times, I mean, who knows? I might be doing that in a little while, so I might be eating my words, but like for the most part, it's like most fishing rods or reels or baits or line, in my opinion, they do pretty much the same thing. So it's hard for me to get up there and say this is the best thing ever. If I do get sponsored, I might just say, hey, this is the stuff I'm using. You guys can use whatever you want. I'm not going to try to like force you to say this is the best fishing reel ever. This is changing the game. You're going to cast 20 yards further and reel it 12 times faster. Like that's just unrealistic. So I don't know how I'm going to handle that in the future if I need to get sponsorship. But I'll try to keep it pretty honest with you guys and transparent. So don't worry about that. If I do talk about products, guys, it's because I really do like using them. That's really the big thing. I just talk about what I have confidence in. So let's see here. Getting through all that. Oh, I jumped all the way to the bottom. A lot of people are saying 1 hour weekly. I can definitely switch that up, guys, and try to do that. What kind of basic bait lineup do you carry that works all season for shallow and deep? Robert Willard, great question. What I would do, Robert, basically is, I missed that question. I don't know how I missed that, but Robert, what I would say for basic baits, if I had to pick 5 fishing lures to take with me year-round, that's a very tall order to do, but if I had to pick 5 fishing lures, my first bait would be a half-ounce Strike King football jig with a Rage Tail craw. That bait will work year-round and is the most versatile bait ever. I catch so many fish on that bait. Now I would pick up that bait. I would fish a half-ounce football jig. You can fish it offshore. You can fish it up kind of shallower in brush piles, super deep, whatever you want to do with that. That's my number one go-to bait any time of the year. And if I had to pick one bait to fish the rest of my life, it would be a half-ounce football jig. Second would be a flat-sided KVD crankbait, KV 1.5 flat. Love that crankbait all through the winter, through the fall, through the spring. That bait is just so good. Not as good in the summertime, but it still works really well. So that'd be number 2. Number 3 would be a Strike King 6XD. You say Strike King baits again. Used to be sponsored by Strike King. So those are the baits I've used for years, and that's what I have confidence in. So Strike King 6XD, great fishing lure. And I can fish that all summer long, in the spring, in the winter, in the fall. Catch a ton of fish on that. What else would I fish? I'm trying to think, guys. Strike King Caffeine Shad. It's like a little fluke style bait. Love that bait. That is the most versatile bait. You can fish it like a Senko. Fish it slow. You can also fish it on top. That's a great lure. Probably have a swimming jig tied on, some sort of swim jig, because you can flip that thing. You can fish it through grass. I love that. Is that 5? That might be that. That's 5. That's 5 fishing lures. I got 5. As you notice, 2 are crankbaits, 2 are jigs. That's pretty much how my fishing goes. I fish 2 crankbaits and 2 jigs I have 2 crankbaits and 2 jigs on the boat year round, regardless, always, like literally always. The other bait I might throw in there is a black buzzbait with a zoom horny tail on the back. You know how much I love that bait. I fish that all summer long. Fish it in the fall. Great search bait and catches big fish. So I would maybe switch that out with the. I don't know what I would switch that for. I'll just do 6. I'm cheating there. But yeah, those are my, like, between those 6 baits, that's like 75% of what I fish year round. See here. Keep going through here. Clifford says, you talk about frogs. What's your favorite frog to throw? I really enjoy the rage tail. Rage tail frogs are good. Zoom horny toads are really good. I like the striking sexy frog. It's got a little bit squishier body, so I think it's a little bit better for if you're fishing up in like grass and stuff like that. But then if I'm fishing lily pads, I like to fish a spro frog, a spro like I don't know the sizes of them, but the normal standard spro frog. And I always fish them in either the stump jumper or the red ear color if I'm fishing like a hollow body frog. Stump jumper or red ear. It's kind of like a yellow with a blue back, purple back, something like that. My go-to color all the time. So those are my go-to frogs. And JT already got the frog for me. Appreciate that. So Halo is asking, what am I using to catch suspended bass? Actually, I'll show you the exact route I was catching on. I'll be back in like 2 seconds. Suspended bass fishing is fun. I love fishing for suspended bass because they're hard to catch, and it's a really good challenge, but that's the bait I was throwing. It's a little, I can probably do this. Little striking rage tail swimmer on a half-ounce head, and it's a little 3.75 inch in the ghost shad color, and I was just reeling that thing over the top. It was like counting it down. It's a half-ounce head, and it falls like a foot per second, and so I was counting it down to like 10 to 15 feet and then reeling it over 35 feet of water, and they were choking it. And I'll also fish a deep diving jerk bait, a regular jerk bait, and an Alabama rig. Those are kind of like my other go-to techniques when I'm fishing for suspended bass. Sometimes I'll fish a jigging spoon, and sometimes I'll fish a drop shot, but single swim bait is always so good. I love fishing a single swim bait because it's just fun to fish. And even if the fish are suspended on a ledge, I'll also fish a big flutter spoon. I'll fish a 5.5 inch hollow body swim bait like the Strike King Shadlicious swim baits, or like the big hollow body swim baits. I can't think of any off the top of my head other than that one. And then hair jig, big hair jig fan. And Cliff Zuber says, an Alabama rig, do you throw a 5-to-1 gear ratio also on the Alabama rig? Yes, just because I want to reel that thing slow and keep it down deep. And then Mike asked, do you think that graphing disturbs the fish? No, I actually don't. It's interesting because I'll graph over almost every single fish I catch. I always just graph over a spot before I fish it almost always. There's only exceptions really on like Lake Dardanelle when I'm fishing on ledges out there because the fish will get in like 6 to 8 feet of water, and I still can graph right over those fish, turn around and catch them. That's not a problem, but I feel like I catch more fish when I come up to a brush pile. If it's like a brush pile or something, the reason for that is because if you imagine a brush pile sitting in 8 feet of water, that's 4 feet tall, your engine is almost going to be hitting the fish on the head if they're in the top of that brush pile. So that's why I think it bothers them more that like the engine is like right in their face. But if the brush pile is in like 15, 16 feet of water and the top comes up to like 12, 13 feet and your boat's going over the top, even though you're driving right over the top, fish are so used to boats running over their heads and doing all that, it doesn't bother them. So unless that brush pile is like 4 feet tall and 8 feet of water, like the ones I fish on Dardanelle, and you drive right over the top of them, it won't bother them most of the time. I've had days where I've gone over a spot with my engine, kicked up dirt on Lake Dardanelle, turned around because I saw a 5-pounder jump out of the water, fire back in there and catch a 5-pounder as the lake was still churned up from my engine. So at that point, I'm like, I'm just graphing every spot. And I just cover enough water too where I may only catch 2 fish off that spot rather than 10 if I hadn't graphed it, but I can cover 15 more spots in a day by using my technique of graphing and only fishing the spots I see. And instead of trying to fish every single spot, it just helps me cover more water. And if I hit 3 or 4 spots with fish, I can still catch a limit as opposed to maybe hitting one spot with fish and catching a limit off of one spot. So that's what my 2 cents are there. JT says, getting some big swim baits, Johnny. Let's see here. That'd be fun to see how it goes. I think that'd be really fun. I went to China for my MBA program, and I've got some giant swim baits, some depths swim baits out there. And so I'm thinking about getting out on like Table Rock Lake or something like that and throwing those. I just have no confidence in them right now, and I'm just trying to make content at the moment to get out some videos for you guys. But once I get, a backlog of videos, that's a great idea, especially in the spring to head out there. Then Big Bass is saying, can you do a breakdown of Grand Lake South End? I'm actually heading there this weekend, so I'll probably be doing videos out there, not even just a breakdown. I'll just go make a whole video of me fishing it. Clifford said, JT, got to laugh out Johnny that one. I'm so far behind these comments, guys, but that was very funny. Appreciate all of the humor from you two tonight. Really funny. Let's see here. I keep skipping ahead. See here. That was Clifford. Gabe Williams is saying 1 hour stream, 1 hour stream per week. Robert's agreeing, so that's probably what I'll try to do then if that's what you guys are looking for. Just a 1 hour stream every week. And then have I ever fished Harris Break in Arkansas? I've tried to go out there, and I wouldn't say I tried. I've thought about going out there, but it's always Lake Maumelle is right before it, and that's one of my favorite lakes in Arkansas, and I just never quite make it to Harris Break. I just kind of know it's really stumpy. I didn't want to mess up my trolling motor or anything. Not that my trolling motor isn't already messed up, so I'm not really. That's not really the reason. I just every time I go out there, I'm like, ooh, I could get instead of driving extra 20 minutes there, I could stop at Lake Maumelle and have an extra 40 minutes to fish. So, anyways. Halo 1 hour weekly, awesome. Okay, that sounds like the fan favorite there. Let us know though, and let me know in the comments anyone else, so we can do a final poll on that. I might do a poll on my Patreon page too, guys. So if you join Patreon, you'll be able to get it on that. And then Hyunjin Cho, he said, please remember me. I'm a huge fan of yours. I will, man. Again, send me some pictures. I have my fishthemoment1@gmail.com. You can find them on some of my social media and stuff, or even just a message on Instagram. Send me some pictures of your fish from Korea. I really want to see those. That's so cool. See here, JT saying it's marketing and fishing needs to change. Fishermen aren't gimmick fools. I agree. I really do, especially the cost. One thing I've been working on, guys, is a video that I think is pretty cool. Actually making a video. I went and bought a $39 Abu Garcia Black Max reel. It's the ones that come in the plastic wrapping from Academy. And I've been fishing that, and actually fished this last weekend on Lake Spavinaw in Oklahoma. And I caught all my fish on that reel on a striking red eye shad, and I was casting that thing a mile, and reeling in, fighting fish on a crankbait, no problems. I fished with it 7-8 times now, and I'm gonna put it through a stress test for a long time to see how it goes. But it's been performing pretty well right now, and honestly, I got most of my reels, or I guess all of my fishing reels and rods free from Quantum when I was sponsored by them back in the day, and I haven't really bought any fishing equipment since. But this is the first reel I've actually bought with my own money, and I'm really impressed. It's not the best reel in the world. It's not my $300 Quantums, but my reels are old at this point too, and so they're still kind of squeaky and not the best at casting. And so I bet that this Abu Garcia Black Max is better than a third of my fishing reels. And I'm pretty impressed with it. I kind of like it. If it was me, I would go for 5 $39 reels and maybe get a $50 to $100 rod, maybe a little bit more on the rods. I bought a super cheap rod too, and I couldn't handle it. It was $10. It was awful. So maybe a little bit more on the rods, but I would go for more rod and reel combos rather than getting a bunch of these $200 reels. You can get 4 black maxes, 5 black maxes for the cost of a $200 reel, and pair those up, and you can have more options when you're fishing. So we'll see. Maybe it'll break in the next time I go fishing, though. So who knows? Cliff Zuber said, if you ever become a guide and I book a trip with you, I'll give you a Calcutta 400 as a tip. Have a great night. Thanks, Clifford. Appreciate that. If you're watching this afterwards, let me see here. Keep skipping ahead. I'm almost getting to the end of these. You guys are just outpacing me just a little bit. So, Dustin saying, what kind / weight of line do you prefer on your cranking rod? I've actually kind of gone back and forth on this, guys. Now that I don't know, I've been thinking about fishing fluorocarbon or monofilament for a while, and I've been going back and forth on it for so long, and I've got to the point now where I'm fishing monofilament for everything except for my jig rods. I fish monofilament on my crankbaits, on my jerk baits, on my topwater baits, spinner baits, chatter baits, all that stuff. I'll fish 20-pound monofilament even on some of my flipping equipment sometimes, just because it's cheaper than the fluorocarbon. The only reason I throw the fluorocarbon is if I'm fishing a deep jig, like I'm fishing a football jig or something where I'm casting and I'm making a long cast offshore and I feel like the water's clearer. That's the kind of stuff where I try to, and I'm fishing the bait slow. That's when I fish the fluorocarbon. But even like if I'm fishing a Carolina rig, I'll just put like 20-pound big game on my rod, and then I'll just tie like a small little liter of fluorocarbon and have the weight and everything to swivel between them. But I just think it's cheaper. It's better. I don't see any problem fishing 10-pound big game as opposed to 10-pound fluorocarbon. It still gets the bait pretty deep, and you can still fish it pretty well. So that's what I've been doing. There's certain situations where you might want to go to the fluorocarbon, like a crankbait if you want to get it super deep. But with all the big crankbaits and stuff now, I never see myself needing to like max out that depth that often just because they have the bigger crankbaits, and I can just upsize the crankbait rather than upsize the line. So I even throw on my Alabama rigs 25-pound big game. Other than that, I throw, like I said, braid on my top waters, like a buzz bait, a walking bait, a frog, stuff like that. But yeah, mono is working pretty good for me, and it's like $8 for 500 yards of big game, and works, I guess. I mean, it's cheap. That's the big thing. And I can buy more and put more money in the boat for gas. So, let's see here. Bassing with classes. Do you want to fish in Alabama rig all day? Most of the time when I'm fishing, if I'm fishing Alabama rig, I do throw it all day. Like I'll put an Alabama rig and a jig on the deck of the boat, and I'll throw the Alabama rig 90% of the day. Sometimes if I catch a bunch of fish off a spot, I might pick up a jerk bait or a jig and fish behind it. But if I am getting any kind of bites on the Alabama rig, I'm going to throw that thing all day. I'm not going to put it down because it's one of those baits where you're not going to get that many bites on it, but when you do, especially in the winter, they're going to be big ones. And normally you can catch multiple fish in a row on the Alabama rig on certain spots or double up even. And so you might only catch 6 fish a day on the rig, but when you do, you're going to have close to 20 pounds almost any lake you fish. So I always try to just keep the thing in my hand all day and just fish it. And it's tough to do. It's kind of like fishing a deep diving crankbait a lot of times where you fish and fish and fish and fish with that thing and you get nothing. And then all of a sudden it's like you load the boat in 5 casts. So that's how I like to fish at least. So let's see here. Kyle Smith saying, really appreciate the lake breakdowns. Appreciate it. Thanks, man. See here. JT says if you have the Dips 250s or 1750s, you need to be throwing them. You got some of the holy grails of the swim bait game. It's worth the chunk and grind. I do have some of the 250 Depths. That's the one I have, the big models. I got those for like $20 in China. It was awesome. So I bought like 3 or 4 of them. They were super cheap at the tackle stores there. Let's see here. Clifford's heading out. Good to see you, man. Nothing wrong with a Black Max. Abu's my favorite brand. That's what JC's saying. Let's see here. Gabe says, I know a guy that can clean, super tool, and work on the gears of your reels for 40 or 50 a reel. I might check that guy out. That's actually a good call to try to get those reels cleaned up and redone. Let's see. See here. Clifford says, when it comes to fishing, Gabe, I make time. That's pretty funny. Okay, I'm all the way down to the end of the questions. So, Bassman class says, can you go more over the thermocline? Bassman class, if you want to learn more about the thermocline, I'm going to jump off here. But if you go to my last live stream on summer bass fishing, I talk about the thermocline in depth in that live stream. So go check it out. It's like I talked about a couple times throughout the live stream. Go check that one out and just scroll through until you'll see a picture of the thermocline like up on the screen here. It'll be like right up on the screen. So check that out and that'll be good. And then JT says, fishing is more important than college work. College is important too. I finished up college, so now I'm out of there and just working full time. So college is important, but fishing is also important, JT. So keep up the college work. It'll pay off too. See here. So Clifford's saying, have a good night. Thanks, Clifford. Basketball class says you're the best fisherman I know. Appreciate that. Don't fish enough to be as good as any Elite Series guys, but I got a lot of knowledge up here. I'm pretty much a super big bass nerd. I just try to apply as much as I can, but there's a lot of really good anglers who kick my butt on the lake. So I don't claim to be the best fisherman out there, but big thing with my videos is I want to show you I'm catching 3 and 4 pound bass because that's what you guys want to catch. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about, I feel like a lot of guys on YouTube, they sit there and they just talk and talk and talk about stuff. And they're like, this is the best way to catch these fish. And they read it in a magazine somewhere. And then they catch like a 12-incher. And that's all they catch in a 20-minute video. And it's like, how do I know you even know what you're doing or that any of the advice was good? So instead, I'm like, I'm going to show a 3 or 4 pounder or at least a bunch of like 2-pounders, like I show a pattern, or I'm catching a lot of fish, so that you guys can actually take that and replicate it, and it proves that I know what I'm talking about. So hopefully that's what you guys enjoy. But other than that, that's just my approach to it, because I always just like hate watching videos. I'm like, this guy talks and talks and talks and talks, and then he catches a 12-incher, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go do this. Like, you didn't catch anything. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents again. I'm getting tired, so I'm rambling about stuff I probably shouldn't be. So anyways, I will talk to you guys on my next stream. I will plan then, probably not next week. I want to get on some videos, but the week after when I'm going to start up doing a stream every week for an hour. That's what people are wanting. And I'll put a poll on my Patreon just to make sure that's what people like. And other than that, hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. If you did, please share it out with your friends. Tell people about the next one. I'll be posting links to them ahead of time so you guys can check them out. Check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/fishthemoment. You can go there to support the channel. You can also vote on my upcoming fishing videos about how I want to handle my live streams, about a lot of stuff for the channel. I'm going to rely on you guys, my loyal fans, to help me figure out what I'm doing. So appreciate that. Thanks again for saying, as always, 75 guys. That is amazing. Guys and gals. I don't want to leave you gals out. So appreciate all the support. Appreciate everything you guys do for me. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.